Marcus Stone's coffee cup crashed to the marble floor of the luxury hotel lobby, sending hot liquids splashing across his $1,000 shoes. His hands shook as he stared across the crowded space, unable to believe what he was seeing. Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Please subscribe to my channel for more sweet videos like this. Let the story continue. Emma, the woman he had thrown out of his office 3 years ago, was sitting at a corner table. But she wasn't alone. 2 identical little boys with dark curly hair sat beside her, swinging their tiny legs from the tall chairs. They looked exactly like him when he was their age. "No," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the hotel's soft jazz music. "This can't be happening." The twins turned their heads toward him at the same moment, and Marcus felt his world tilt sideways. Their eyes deep blue, just like his, locked onto his face with curious expressions. One of them pointed at him and tugged on Emma's sleeve. Emma followed the child's gaze, and when her eyes met Marcus's, her face went completely white. She grabbed both children's hands and stood up so fast her chair nearly fell backward. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Those children, they had to be. They looked exactly like, but that was impossible. Emma had tried to tell him something 3 years ago, and he had. The memory hit him like a punch to the stomach. 3 years earlier, Marcus Stone was having the worst day of his life, and that was saying something for a man who owned $1 billion tech empire. The morning had started with his biggest investor pulling out of a major deal. Then, his head of engineering quit without notice. By lunch, the company's stock had dropped 15 points, and the board was demanding answers he didn't have. He sat behind his massive oak desk on the 40th floor of Stone Technologies, his jaw clenched tight as he barked orders into his phone. "I don't care what it costs! Fix it!" He slammed the phone down and rubbed his temples. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Stone? There's someone here to see you." "Not now, Janet. I'm drowning in fires over here." "Sir, it's Emma Rodriguez from accounting. She says it's urgent." Marcus groaned. Emma, the quiet girl from the 3rd floor who always seemed to be watching him during company meetings. Pretty enough, sure, but he didn't have time for whatever workplace drama she wanted to discuss. "Tell her to make an appointment for next week." "She says it can't wait, sir. She's been trying to reach you for days." Marcus's patience snapped like a rubber band stretched too far. "Fine, send her in, but make it quick." The door opened, and Emma stepped into his office. She looked nervous, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself as she approached his desk. Her usually neat brown hair was messy, like she'd been running her hands through it. "Mr. Stone, thank you for seeing me. I know you're busy, but I really need to talk to you about..." "Whatever it is, Emma. Can it wait? I'm dealing with about 50 crises right now." Marcus didn't even look up from his computer screen. Emma took a shaky breath. "No, it can't wait. It's about what happened at the company retreat 2 months ago." Marcus's fingers froze over his keyboard. The company retreated, the night when he'd had too much wine at the celebration dinner. The night Emma had helped him back to his room when he could barely walk straight. The night when he finally looked up at her, and his stomach dropped. Emma's hands were pressed against her stomach, and there were tears in her eyes. "I'm pregnant, Marcus." The words hit him like a freight train. Marcus stared at her, his brain struggling to process what she just said. "What?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "I'm pregnant. It happened that night at the retreat. I know you probably don't remember much, but..." "No." Marcus stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "No, that's impossible." Emma's face crumpled. "I've been trying to tell you for weeks. I called your office dozens of times, sent emails, even tried to catch you in the hallway, but you're always surrounded by people or rushing somewhere." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest like floodwater. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when his entire company was falling apart. "Emma, look, I'm sure you're upset about something, but..." "I'm not upset," Emma's voice cracked. "I'm scared. I don't know what to do, and I thought you should know." Marcus's mind raced through all the implications. If word got out that he'd gotten an employee pregnant, the scandal would destroy what was left of his reputation. The board would have his head. The investors would run for the hills. "How do I even know it's mine?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Emma looked like he'd slapped her. Because you're the only one, Marcus. The only one I've ever... She couldn't finish the sentence, but Marcus wasn't listening anyway. All he could think about was damage control. Look, Emma, I'm sure this is all very difficult for you, but I can't deal with this right now. I'm fighting to save my entire company. Whatever you need, whatever this is about, you're going to have to handle it yourself. Emma stared at him in shock. Handle it myself? Marcus, this is your... I'm busy! Marcus exploded, his voice echoing through the office. Handle it yourself! Emma flinched like he'd struck her. Tears streamed down her face as she stood there, trembling. I can't believe you're saying this to me, she whispered. Emma, I don't have time for drama right now. If you need money or something, talk to HR. They'll figure out some kind of arrangement. Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. An arrangement? You think this is about money? Isn't it always? Marcus was already turning back to his computer, dismissing her. For a long moment, Emma just stood there. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Stronger. Colder. You know what, Marcus? You're right. I will handle it myself. She turned and walked toward the door, her spine straight and her head high. And don't worry, she said without looking back. You'll never have to deal with me or my drama again. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and Marcus was alone. He told himself he felt relieved. Now, 3 years later, Marcus watched as Emma gathered the 2 little boys and hurried toward the hotel's exit. One of the children, the one who had pointed at him, kept looking back over his shoulder with those familiar blue eyes. Marcus's legs finally remembered how to work. He pushed through the crowd, following them. Emma! Wait! She froze, just before reaching the revolving door. The children looked up at her with confusion, then back at the strange man calling their mother's name. Emma slowly turned around, and Marcus saw something in her expression that made his heart stop. It wasn't anger, or hurt, or even surprise. It was fear. Emma, he said again, his voice gentler now. Please, don't run. She pulled the children closer to her. What do you want, Marcus? He looked down at the 2 little boys, really looked at them this time. They both had his dark curly hair, his blue eyes, and even the same stubborn set to their jaws. They were maybe 2.5 years old. The timing was... Are they? He couldn't finish the question. Emma's jaw tightened. Are they what, Marcus? Are they mine? The taller of the 2 boys tugged on Emma's jacket. Mommy, who's that man? Emma knelt down to their level. This is someone Mommy used to work with. The shorter boy studied Marcus with serious eyes. He looked sad. Marcus felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. These children, his children, were right there in front of him, and they had no idea who he was. Emma, please, can we talk? There's nothing to talk about. Emma stood up and took the boy's hands. You made your position very clear 3 years ago. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Her voice was steady, but Marcus could see her hands shaking. But it's too late now. It doesn't have to be. Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. Doesn't it? Where were you when I was throwing up every morning for months? Where were you when I had to quit my job because I couldn't afford childcare? Where were you when I gave birth to them alone in a hospital room? Each word hit Marcus like a physical blow. Emma, where were you when they took their first steps? Did they say their first words? Had nightmares and called for their daddy, who never came? I didn't know, because you didn't want to know. Emma's composure finally cracked. I tried to tell you, Marcus. I begged you to listen, and you threw me out of your office like I was nothing. The children sensed their mother's distress and pressed closer to her legs. The taller one looked up at Marcus with suspicious eyes. You made Mommy sad, he said in a small, serious voice. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. I did. I made a terrible mistake. Emma wiped her face quickly and forced a smile for the children. Come on, boys. We need to go. Wait. Marcus stepped forward, and Emma instinctively pulled the children back. The movement cut him deeper than any knife could have. Please, just tell me their names. Emma hesitated, then looked down at the boys. This is Daniel, she said, touching the taller child's head. And this is David. Daniel and David, Marcus repeated softly. His sons. He had sons, and he didn't even know their names until this moment. Mommy, I'm hungry, David said, tugging on Emma's sleeve. I know, baby. We'll get lunch as soon as we... There's a restaurant upstairs, Marcus said quickly. Please, just lunch. Let me get to know them. Emma shook her head. Marcus, please. Marcus had never begged for anything in his life, but he was begging now. 1 hour. That's all I'm asking. Emma looked at him for a long moment, then down at the children. Daniel and David were watching the conversation with wide, curious eyes. Finally, she sighed. 1 hour. Marcus felt a surge of hope. Thank you. But Marcus, Emma's voice turned cold again. If you hurt them, if you confuse them or make promises you can't keep, this will be the last time you ever see them. The threat hung in the air between them as they walked toward the elevator. Marcus's mind was spinning with questions, with regret, with the overwhelming realization that his entire world had just changed. As the elevator doors closed, trapping them in the small space together, Daniel looked up at him with those familiar blue eyes. Are you our daddy? The little boy asked. Emma went rigid. Marcus felt his heart stop. The elevator continued to rise, carrying them toward a conversation that would change everything. But just as Marcus opened his mouth to answer, the elevator lurched to a sudden stop between floors, and the lights went out. In the pitch-black elevator, David started crying. Mommy, I'm scared. His little voice echoed in the darkness. Emma's voice was calm but tense. It's okay, baby. The lights will come back on. Marcus felt around for his phone's flashlight, his hands shaking. When the dim light filled the small space, he saw Emma crouched down, holding both boys close to her chest. Their faces were scared and confused. The elevator's just stuck, Emma whispered to them. It happens sometimes. Daniel, the braver of the two, looked at Marcus. Even in his fear, his question hadn't been forgotten. You didn't answer me, he said quietly. Are you our daddy? Emma's eyes met Marcus's over the children's heads. In that look, he saw 3 years of pain, exhaustion, and fierce protectiveness. Marcus's voice caught. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that their father abandoned them before they were even born? Yes, he whispered. I am. The words hung in the air like a confession. David stopped crying and stared at Marcus with wide eyes. Really? Daniel asked. Marcus nodded, tears running down his face. Really? Where have you been? Daniel's question was innocent, but it cut deeper than any accusation. Marcus looked at Emma, hoping she might help him answer, but she just watched him with cold eyes. This was his mess to explain. I was lost, Marcus said finally. I was very lost, and I couldn't find you. But you found us now, David said, his fear forgotten in his excitement. Yes. Marcus smiled through his tears. I found you now. Emma pressed the emergency button on the elevator panel. We need to get out of here, she said, her voice tight. A crackling voice came through the speaker. Emergency services. What's your location? We're stuck in the elevator at the Grand Plaza Hotel. There are 2 small children with us. Help is on the way. Please remain calm. As they waited in the dim light of Marcus's phone, the boys started asking more questions. Do you live in a big house? David asked. Do you have toys? Daniel added. Each innocent question felt like a small knife twisting in Marcus's chest. He had a mansion with 12 bedrooms and no one to fill them. He had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, but he'd missed every single day of his children's lives. I have a big house, he said softly, but it's very empty. You could come live with us, David announced. We have a small house, but Mommy says small houses have more love. Marcus looked at Emma, but she was staring at the floor. We live in an apartment now, she said quietly. It's not much, but it's ours. Where? Marcus asked. Riverside District. Emma's jaw was tight. Section 8 housing. Marcus knew that area. It wasn't dangerous exactly, but it wasn't where he ever imagined his children growing up. Government housing for families who couldn't afford anything else. Emma, I could help. We don't need your help. Her voice was sharp. We've been fine without you. But the boys are fine. Emma pulled them closer. They're happy. They're healthy. They don't need anything from you. Mommy, why are you angry? Daniel asked, looking between his parents with worried eyes. Emma's expression softened immediately. I'm not angry, sweetheart. I'm just surprised. The elevator gave a small jerk, and then the lights flickered back on. A moment later, the doors opened to reveal 2 firefighters and a hotel security guard. Everyone okay in here? One of the firefighters asked. We're fine, Emma said, quickly scooping up both boys. Thank you. As they stepped out of the elevator, Marcus felt like he was losing them all over again. Emma was already walking toward the hotel exit, the boys looking back at him with curious eyes. Wait, Marcus called. Please, Emma, don't leave like this. She stopped, but didn't turn around. What do you want from me, Marcus? I want to be their father. Emma laughed bitterly. You had your chance to be their father. You chose your company instead. I was wrong. I was scared and stupid and wrong. You were cruel. Emma turned around, and Marcus saw tears in her eyes. Do you know what it was like? Being pregnant and alone because the man who was supposed to care about me threw me away like garbage? The boys sensed the tension and pressed closer to their mother. I worked 2 jobs while I was pregnant because I couldn't afford to live on what little savings I had. I cleaned offices at night and worked at a grocery store during the day. When I got too big to work, I had to move in with my sister and her 4 kids in a 2-bedroom apartment. Marcus felt sick. Emma, I went to the hospital by myself when my water broke. I gave birth to your sons alone, Marcus. Alone. And when the nurse asked me what to put on their birth certificates for father, do you know what I wrote? Marcus shook his head, afraid to hear the answer. Unknown. Emma's voice broke. I wrote unknown because the man who got me pregnant didn't want anything to do with us. Mommy, don't cry, David said, patting Emma's cheek with his small hand. Emma wiped her eyes and forced a smile. I'm okay, baby. Marcus stepped closer. Emma, let me fix this. Let me help. How? Emma's voice was raw. How do you fix 3 years? How do you fix all the nights I stayed up alone when they were sick? How do you fix the fact that they learned to walk and talk and laugh without their father there to see it? I can't fix the past, Marcus said desperately. But I can be here now. I can be the father they deserve. For how long? Emma challenged. Until work gets busy again? Until being a father becomes inconvenient? Forever, Marcus said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Emma, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you in ways that can't be undone. But please, please don't punish them because I was a coward. Emma looked down at the boys, who were watching the conversation with worried expressions. They're not being punished, she said quietly. They have a mother who loves them more than anything in the world. They have grandparents and an uncle and cousins who adore them. They have a family, but they don't have their father. By your choice. Marcus felt his heart breaking all over again. Emma, what if I could prove to you that I've changed? What if I could show you that I want to be the man they need me to be? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. Daniel and David, she said, kneeling down to their level. This man is your biological father. That means part of him is part of you. But being someone's biological father doesn't make you their daddy. A daddy is someone who loves you and takes care of you and never leaves you. She looked up at Marcus with steel in her eyes. If you want to be their daddy, you have to prove it. Not with money or grand gestures or promises. With time, with consistency. By putting them first, even when it's hard. Marcus nodded eagerly. I will. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. Emma stood up and took the boys' hands. You can see them 1 afternoon a week. Supervised visits only. If you miss even 1 visit, we're done. Emma, those are my terms. Her voice left no room for negotiation. Take it or leave it. Marcus looked down at Daniel and David, who were watching him with hopeful expressions. I'll take it, he said, without hesitation. Emma nodded curtly. Saturdays at 2 p.m. Riverside Park. Don't be late. As she walked away with the boys, Daniel broke free from her grip and ran back to Marcus. Will you really come see us? He asked, his blue eyes serious. Marcus knelt down to Daniel's level, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. "I promise," he said, meaning it more than he'd ever meant anything in his life. Daniel smiled a smile that looked exactly like Marcus's and hugged him quickly before running back to Emma. As Marcus watched his family disappear into the crowd outside the hotel, he realized that his entire life had just changed. The company that had once seemed like the most important thing in the world suddenly felt insignificant compared to the two little boys who barely knew his name. He had been given a second chance he didn't deserve. He wasn't going to waste it. 3 months later, Marcus sat on a park bench watching Daniel and David play on the swings. Emma sat beside him, no longer tense and guarded, but not quite trusting either. "They love these visits," she said quietly. "So do I." Marcus pushed David higher as the little boy squealed with delight. "Emma, I need to ask you something." She tensed slightly. "What?" "I want to add my name to their birth certificates. I want to officially adopt them, even though they're already mine. I want the world to know they're my sons." Emma was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she wasn't going to answer. "It's not about what you want anymore, Marcus," she said finally. "It's about what's best for them." "I know." Marcus caught Daniel as he jumped off his swing. "And I hope that having their father in their lives is what's best for them." Emma watched as Daniel climbed onto Marcus's shoulders, laughing as his father spun him around. "Maybe," she said softly. "Maybe it is." As the sun set over Riverside Park, Marcus realized that he had finally found what he'd been searching for his whole life. Not in boardrooms or bank accounts or business deals, but in the laughter of two little boys who called him Daddy and meant it. He had been the worst kind of fool 3 years ago. But sometimes, if you're very lucky and work very hard, you get a chance to become the man you should have been all along. Looking at his sons really seeing them for the first time, Marcus knew that he was finally home.